It's really not safe for anyone to touch her but me.
A sword and sorcery movie that was intended as a pilot for a television series. Except here, instead of a sword, the hero wields a bow. But bow and sorcery doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it?
Oh, man's blood! Why do I even try?
The Archer, Fugitive from the Empire.
Now, maybe you can teach me something about honor, but I can teach you lots about plain old survival.
The Archer, Fugitive from the Empire is a 1981 movie intended as a pilot film for a hoped-for NBC television series. When the series did not eventuate, the movie was repackaged as a standalone feature where, like a Nutella pizza, it would become reasonably popular in parts of Europe.
In a time that might have been, or could yet still be.
High fantasy, where the story takes place on a world almost certainly not our own Earth, was a genre that had thrived in books and comics, but before the 1980s hadn't really made inroads into the area of live-action productions in the US. Most live-action movies and television with a fantasy bent to that time had been set on Earth, or at least a stylized version of it. The 80s would see producers dip their toes in the water to see if the piranhas were biting, and perhaps see if they wouldn't need that pedicure after all.
Wait, there's more.
It wasn't just books or comics or early video games that entertained fantasy fans at the time, but there was the hugely popular role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, which had its hooks into a large section of the sort of person who might possibly watch a weekly fantasy television series. In The Archer, there are neither dungeons nor dragons, but there are snake people and a sorceress.
What we dreamed of was food and gold. Nothing honorable like your great quest for kinghood.
Looking back, it's easy to see films like Conan the Barbarian from 1982 being the most influential on film projects of that decade. A decade that would eventually see dozens of low-budget fantasy movies destined for the home video market. That is, unless of course you're one of those weirdos on Team Beastmaster.
What's your name, child?
Torin of Maulville, son of Brachus.
Oh.
Whose blood sire was Taurus, first High King of the Hawk Alliance.
This film predates that fantasy boom, before the lead hero had to have more muscles than a bodybuilding magazine. Known variously as The Archer and the Sorceress, or The Archer, Fugitive from the Empire, the movie tells a story of a world that's a bit like ours in the past, but not ours, and legally speaking, not explicitly like other worlds from pre-existing properties. That bit is very important.
The 12 Malvilian clans fought among themselves. They ignored the growing threat of the Bardrakian dynasty.
Archer is also a little bit confusing to start with, since it has to build up this world that's totally new and not at all based on anything else. It does give off the right vibes where it's going for a proper fantasy setting on a television budget, because it's as if somebody saw Hawk the Slayer and said, yeah, let's do this on telly.
Come on, Mark, you beat us to the high rock.
Whose place is slow, eh?
I only wish to get the great cat, Master Bowman, sir.
Torin is a cocky young man whose father Brachus is the king of the Hawk clan. Torin's best bud is the archer Marc, and they encounter the sorceress Estra, who's got beef with Torin's father, but that will be put to one side.
Are you a woman or a goddess?
Estra gives Torin a prophecy, a hopeless search. Look, we've all been there late for work trying to find your car keys. It often feels like a hopeless search, which is why I just leave my keys in the ignition when I go to the mall. Now, if I could just find where I left my car, that would be great. Torin's cousins, Sandros and Zach Galifianakis, do a deal with their tribe's mortal enemy, Gar, where they will help Gar murder King Brachus and frame Torin for the crime. Torin is imprisoned awaiting punishment, while Sandros is proclaimed the new ruler of the Hawk clan. I don't know, he looks less of a hawk and more like a gull. Despite being the main beneficiary, Gar repays Sandros for his treachery with more treachery. So much treachery. It does sound like the time I had to carpool to work with my office nemesis. I had to drive the prick to work for 2 weeks before he admitted he was on holiday for those 2 weeks, and he just wanted to make me drive miles out of my way for a laugh.
Well met, sir. Well met indeed, Hawk Spawn.
The oldest trick in the book. Debase yourself for a powerful figure and watch them repay your treachery-based loyalty with not Walmart gift cards, but death. Everything in this movie revolves around a sorcerer called Lazar, who was the mentor of Torin's father Brachus and apparently responsible for the death of Estra's mother. Marc frees Torin and they go on the run, leaving behind the Hawk clan, while the movie pivots to the search phase. hunting down Lazar Sar is a general overall goal for the characters that is not settled in this movie.
The untried Prince Toran, a fugitive, with old Marc his only follower, and finding Lazar Sar his only goal.
Basically, finding this elusive fella would be the main character's driving motivations in any continuing series. A plot line that, of course, would in all probability never be wrapped up. Marc is dying and he bequeaths his magic heart bow Elb to Toran. Thing is, the bow will only allow Toran to touch it if he's worthy. If the bow does accept Toran, he'll end up with a snazzy mark on his chest that was apparently designed by a toddler who wants to grow up to be a UI designer.
Marc, she accepts me. Marc!
Toran is chased by Gar and his snake people, with Toran injuring Gar and escaping across an acid lake with the help of the charming rogue Slant.
That's tough to beat, large one. Tough, very tough.
Slant is all about the percentages, what he can get away with in any situation. He tries to rob Toran, but that goes nowhere, and after an uneasy truce, the pair agree to travel together. They end up in the town of Kamal, which is under siege from a being claiming to be Lazar Sar. This does seem like a stroke of luck. I mean, what are the odds of the first town you wander into leading straight to the fella you've been looking for? With the help of Estra, the maybe Lazar Sar guy is driven off. Or perhaps he was late for an appointment at the physiotherapist. That armour looks like it would kill after wearing it for a few hours. The town's leadership offer Toran and friends the job of taking on the armoured foe, and since basically that's been their goal all along, they accept the mission, which is, killing two birds with one stone, or in this case, two quest lines with one arrow.
Agreed.
He shall be praised. We're all agreed.
The trio find that Lazar Sar is actually a Lazar Sar-like rather than the real thing, a manifestation created and controlled by an ex-slave, Rhaegar. And of course, just when you thought everything was fine and dandy, Gah shows up, and then he's beaten by the trio who work together. And while he's defeated, he's not dead, where he will swear revenge on Toran. Estra decides she's got to go off and find Lazar Sar, and then Toran gets a message from Lazar Sar himself, come and free him from wherever the hell he is, because he has some interesting things to say. And while we're here, you look like you need some arrows.
Think of all the things we have in store along the way.
Or not, no. Parts of this are quite good, and parts of it aren't especially pretty good. In short, it's a mixed bag, like a Halloween candy haul from a street where half the residents are nutritionists.
I love you two when you don't know whether to kiss or cut.
As a feature film, this would have been a little underwhelming, mainly because it was conceived of as a television project, which meant it would have the budget and shooting schedule of a TV movie rather than a feature. And since it was a trial run for a television series, it wouldn't really try to compete with the feature film of the day. However, it does come off much, much better than the dozens of low-rent Conan the Barbarian rip-offs that we would see cluttering the shelves of video rental libraries later in the 1980s.
See how much we all love him!
The script does seem to be from the perspective of somebody who gets the genre, who understands the sort of world building required, where, you have multiple factions and settlements, and there's a lot of scope for many adventures that would ideally clock in around about, 48 minutes without commercials.
Oh, it's as I said, Riz. The dynasty wants what we have to offer.
The Hawk clan are portrayed a little like Vikings. The town of Kamal has a Roman feel, and of course that's not just because the costumes and sets have a superficial resemblance to leftover costumes and set from, a much larger Roman Empire movie. There's Gar and his snake people who have decent costumes and makeup effects, and lastly Slant's people, who are only spoken of in this movie, but it's a fair bet if there was a television series you would have seen a little more of them. The first act has so much exposition you'd think you were cramming for a history exam, and after Toran has been cast out, we mainly focus on Toran and Slant. We occasionally cut to Estra, who's keeping tabs on everyone with her magic, and there's a bit detailing Gar's backstory. The film's big climax takes place in a cavern. It's a simple yet effective set, which works relatively well. Throughout the movie, Toran's heart bow is more than a simple bow. Arrows here explode on contact, and a few times along the way, Toran's arrows are magically replenished by magic. I mean, they just don't appear out of nowhere. He's literally getting magical deliveries. Magic being a thing would certainly be disruptive for the food delivery industry. Toran, like Marc before him, will inherit the Heartbow's brand on his chest, though truth be told, it does look like it's drawn on with a Sharpie.
I think my question's just about to be answered.
George Kennedy pops up for a few scenes as Brachus, the soon-to-be dead king of the Hawk clan. And like a few of the character actors in this, Kennedy seems to be having a lot of fun in a role that was quite different to the sort of thing he'd normally be offered.
just how stupid they really are.
Marc Alaimo, a prolific heavy in 80s television and future main villain of Deep Space Nine, pops up as the treacherous Sandros. Indian actor Kebir Bedi was also a star in Italy and would later play the henchman in Octopussy.
Gar, the Drakian, the Destroyer.
Belinda Bauer, a popular 80s star for small to medium budget productions, was Estra, who is suitably otherworldly, using her magic to see things far away. She's usually dressed in a costume that's a mix of Frazetta and, unfortunately, frostbite.
We can't be human, you and I. Not truly human, until our promises are kept, one way or the other.
George McInnes probably thought he was appearing in a less goofy film, but he gives his all anyway.
I love money. Love gambling it away.
Victor Campos probably steals the show as Slant, who's given the best dialogue and in turn offers the best delivery in the film. He was an actor who guested in nearly everything for decades. Most of the rest of the cast is littered with a few familiar faces, people who treat it seriously and find a way to deliver their lines with some sort of conviction.
Hey, come back here!
Oh, and there's Night Court star Richard Mole, who appears as an odd ferryman who just wanders off, never to be heard from again.
Look, I appreciate what you did back there, but I have to move on. You talk too much.
The star Lane Caudell was adequate in the role, even if he does look a little bit like a Ken doll that's been left outside in the yard for a few months.
I'll take your hate, Estra, if that's all you have to give.
He would leave acting behind for other things not long after this was made, but he would later name his son Toran.
My name's Torin, not Child. I'm not a child anymore.
With so much exposition thrown at you early on, it can be hard for the film to find its bearings, but it soon settles down into an adventure format.
Many have wanted to be one with a heart bow. They died trying.
The action scenes can be reasonably enjoyable. The heart bow, it must be said, does not f*** around, firing exploding arrows that send stuntmen flying around in all directions. The colour wash that accompanies the bow's use is hopefully not meant to induce migraines, but if pain persists, see your doctor, or failing that, consult somebody's distant aunt's friend's neighbour on Facebook.
Fool, you hot-headed idiot!
The score on its own would probably sound fine as a prog rock album. You know, a lot of 80s productions have synth scores with varying degrees of success. With the score for this married to the visuals, it sometimes feels like a Hooked on Classic sequel called Hooked on Acid.
Woman's blood.
Another area where the production takes a swing and a miss is the way the visuals are handled in post-production. The editing can be very busy at times, but in a distracting way, where we'll have multiple images overlaid, dissolves within dialogue scenes, rapid cutting, slowing down action scenes in post-production, and fairly excessive use of colour effects. It's almost as if they didn't have faith in what had been shot and tried to fix it in post. The result is best described as kinetic, and not in a good way like that fancy watch that you don't have to wind up every day, but in a bad way. Imagine a runaway steam train roaring down a hill towards an orphanage while a brass band plays Glenn Miller's In the Mood, which in turn leads the train's engineer to shovel even more coal into the engine.
I have done all I can. Now stop plaguing me!
Some of the weird editing and effects are to create mystery or to show magical powers at work, and sometimes it's just the throw to the intended commercial break. Much of it feels like it's from a demo reel of a music video director trying to get a job at MTV. At other times, action scenes are slowed down, which tends to make them look more than a little fake. Also, more than a little fake, my credentials as a nuclear power plant inspector.
Find Lazar. He's the only one that can help you become king.
The film was written, produced and directed by Nicholas Corea, who had been a prolific writer on the Incredible Hulk series and would also contribute to dozens of classic series, Airwolf, Street Hawk, but not made up but still logical sounding series such as Street Wolf, Airhawk, Waterfish and Hammock Sloth.
And you're still very hard to listen to.
So, the script seems okay, the cast seems okay, the presentation seems okay, but it still doesn't quite gel into a production that at any point ever made me wish that the series had gone ahead, which is a pity.
What do you want from me, Drushan? Someone to laugh at cause he was fool enough to trust you?
Unlike so many of the cheesier, low-budget 80s sword and sorcery productions that would litter video libraries, this one actually feels like it came from people who appreciated the genre.
No one's gonna stop that laser saw maniac.
We have to. You don't.
So extra points for the best of intentions, you just have to take away more points for the inconsistent results.
How can you guarantee there'll be more?
Slant and Toran would have been the central characters in any continuing series, but as things stand at the end of this one-and-done movie, Estra is left as a character that may or may not have had a continuing role in the series, but worrying about what might have been for a fantasy television show decades ago isn't really worth the stress. Unless you want to treat it like a television version of fantasy baseball, except in this case it would be fantasy TV.
Who do you two think you are anyway, huh? Some daredevils in a storyteller's yarn?
We never really ever get that live-action television version of Dungeons & Dragons outside of something like Wizards and Warriors, which did at least get a very short season, but that short-lived show would have a very tongue-in-cheek vibe. The Archer, as it stands, had some potential had it gone to series, but them's the breaks.
And my quest is over before it began.
So as somebody who doesn't always appreciate the genre, this is one that I'd never heard of, and I only discovered it as a recommendation as a result of looking at films like Krull or Hawk the Slayer. I mean, it's no Hawk the Slayer, but thankfully, what is?
He just didn't understand us.
In the 1980s, high fantasy on American television was a rare bird, like a seagull wearing prescription sunglasses. And after The Archer wasn't picked up as a series, that motherfucking seagull was walking around like he owned the place.
Why am I doing this?
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
One must be truly evil to wear it. I thought I was.